Sports are supposed to be fun, right? A little competition, some teamwork, maybe a trophy at the end. We grow up with it, man. Little league, high school football, pickup games at the park. It's all about good times and pushing yourself. But what if I told you that beneath the cheers and the bright stadium lights, there are stories so dark, so terrifying, they'll make you question if some games should even be played at all? We're talking about the dark side of sports, dude. The kind of stuff they don't show you on ESPN. From deadly games to supernatural curses, sports history is filled with terrifying stories that most fans don't even know about. We're talking about the kind of stuff that'll keep you up at night. And today we're diving deep into the most chilling, spine-tingling facts from the world of sports. So buckle up because this is going to get weird. Let's get into it. Picture this. It's 1942, World War II is raging, and Ukraine is under Nazi control. Brutal occupation, man, just awful. A group of former professional soccer players, guys who used to play for a living, are forced to play against a team of Nazi officers. Now these weren't just any exhibition match, these guys were playing for their lives. The players were warned. Lose, or face the consequences. Imagine the pressure, the fear, knowing that your life is literally on the line every time you step on the field. But here's the crazy part. Despite the threats, despite the impossible odds, they won. Can you imagine the guts it took to stand up to those Nazis on the field? But their victory was short-lived. Just days later, several of them were executed. They were murdered in cold blood for winning a game. That's not some Hollywood movie script, man. That's a real story. Playing the game cost them their lives. It makes you think about the true cost of freedom and the sacrifices some people have to make. Now, if you're an NFL fan, you've probably heard of the Madden curse. It's like this weird, dark cloud hanging over the league. Every player who lands on the cover of Madden, the famous football video game, seems to have their career take a nosedive. It's insane, right? These are guys at the top of their game, superstars, and then bam, they get the cover and it's all downhill from there. Injuries, bad seasons, sometimes even personal tragedies. It's like the universe is out to get them. Coincidence? Maybe. But when you start looking at the numbers, it gets freaky. I mean, almost every cover athlete has suffered some kind of misfortune. It's like clockwork. You gotta wonder, what if the curse is real? Is it some kind of ancient voodoo, bad juju? Who knows, but it's enough to make you think twice about ever wanting your face on that cover. This is a big one, man, a classic sports curse story. When the Boston Red Sox traded Babe Ruth, the great Bambino himself, to the Yankees in 1919, they unknowingly doomed themselves to 86 years of heartbreak. Think about that. 86 years. It's like a lifetime of suffering for Red Sox fans. Year after year, disaster struck. Devastating losses in the World Series, bizarre errors, freak accidents, you name it. Fans started to believe their team was literally cursed. I mean, how else do you explain that level of misfortune? It wasn't until 2004 that the Red Sox finally broke the streak and won the World Series. Can you imagine the relief in Boston when that happened? But for almost a century, it seemed like something supernatural, something unexplainable was keeping them from victory. Chapter 4. The Ghost Stadium of Malaysia. Now we're getting into some truly creepy stuff. The Shah Alam Stadium in Malaysia was once a place of excitement, competition, everything a stadium should be. But today it stands abandoned, overtaken by nature. Vines crawling up the walls, seats crumbling, the whole place is just eerie, man. And it's not just the decay that's unsettling. Players and visitors claim to have seen shadowy figures moving in the empty stands. They hear whispers where no one was standing, and some even feel invisible hands pulling them back as they tried to leave. I'm talking full-on ghost stories, man. Could it be the spirits of former players, still clinging to the game they loved? Or something darker, feeding off the energy of the stadium? Whatever it is, it's enough to make you want to steer clear of that place. Chapter 5. The Disappearing Marathon Runner. The Olympics, man, they're supposed to be about pushing human limits, about achieving the impossible. But sometimes the impossible takes a dark turn. In the 1912 Olympics, a Japanese runner named Shizo Kanekuri started the race but never finished. He literally vanished, just disappeared into thin air. For years, no one knew what happened to him. Had he gotten lost, injured, worse? Turns out, the truth was stranger than fiction. Kanekuri had collapsed from heat exhaustion during the race and was taken in by a Swedish family. But he was so embarrassed, so ashamed of not finishing, that he never contacted the Olympic officials. He just went back to Japan and lived his life. It wasn't until 1967, 50 years later, that the Olympics officially let him finish his race. They tracked him down, flew him back to Sweden, and he crossed that finish line. But for decades, Shizo Kanekuri was the marathon man who vanished. Chapter 6. People think of football, boxing, MMA, even bull riding when they think of dangerous sports. But those are walks in the park compared to the real deal. We're talking about base jumping. This isn't just a sport, it's a dance with death. Imagine throwing yourself off a cliff, a building, or a bridge with just a parachute to save you. No safety net, no second chances. Just you, gravity, and a thin sheet of fabric. Sounds insane, right? That's because it is. Base jumping has the highest fatality rate of any sport. The margin for error is tiny, and even the most experienced jumpers have lost their lives chasing that adrenaline rush. It's so dangerous that in some places it's straight up illegal. But that doesn't stop people from doing it. It's the ultimate test of courage, of pushing your limits, even if it means staring death in the face. Chapter 7. You want to talk about terrifying to watch? Look no further than the skeleton race in the Winter Olympics. These athletes are basically human torpedoes. They strap themselves face first onto a tiny sled and rocket down an icy track at speeds over 80 miles per hour. 80 miles per hour, head first with almost no protection. One small mistake, one bump in the ice, and their head could hit solid ice at deadly speeds. It's one of the most intense, most terrifying events to watch because, you know, if something goes wrong, it's going to be bad. Really bad. But that's part of the appeal, right? That raw courage, that willingness to put your life on the line for a shot at glory. It's both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. Chapter 8. Soccer, or football as the rest of the world calls it, is known as the beautiful game. It's a global phenomenon, bringing people together with its passion and skill. But even the beautiful game has a dark side. A really, really dark side. In 1964, a referee's controversial call during a Peru versus Argentina match ignited a riot so violent, so chaotic, that it remains one of the darkest days in sports history. We're not talking about a few brawls in the stands, we're talking about absolute mayhem. 328 people died and over 500 were injured. A soccer game turned into a death trap, with fans trampled, suffocated, and crushed by the panicked crowd. It's a stark reminder that even in the heat of competition, even when emotions run high, violence is never the answer. Outer look, I love sports, man. The thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, it's all part of what makes it so compelling. But we gotta remember, sports are more than just games. They're a reflection of ourselves, of our history, and sometimes that history is pretty damn dark. Curses, deaths, disappearances, this is the side of sports most people never hear about. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement, but it's important to remember that there's always more to the story than what we see on the surface. So, next time you watch a game, just remember, history has a way of hiding its darkest moments in plain sight. And sometimes those dark moments can be truly terrifying.